So, welcome to the Nurture Culture podcast, where we explore the edges of co-creating a more benevolent world with nature and with our fellow humans. I'm here with the beautiful Ginger Edwards. My name is Iris Sullivan Dare, and we're here on the North Oregon coast.
Yay. Yeah, we're back. We took
We're
a
back.
little moment when I got sick. So sorry, everybody, but we're back. I'm feeling better. And I'm sure you appreciated that I was not coughing into a microphone because it was probably would not sound so good. So I am able to breathe and hear again. And I know we start our podcast with what we are nurturing. So I'm going to ask you, Iris, what are you nurturing right now?
I am nurturing my sense of time. I kind of obsess about time often. And my relationship with time. But specifically today, I woke up thinking about my cat had a little lesson for me because she sometimes sleeps with us, but not always. And she totally came and got in the bed to purr this morning, which is not how she always does. And she was a rescue cat, so she wouldn't even let us touch her for about a year. We could barely touch her. So for her to come and do that is like it's still a gift, even though she's been doing that for a few years now, but we've had her for 8 years, and it's still a gift. And I was like, why is it that when I have something to recover from, I think it has a timeline, but with her, we didn't feel like she had a timeline. We knew we were getting a rescue cat. We knew she'd had a really bad scene before she was with us. And we were able to let her have her time, have whatever time it took. It's like, I'm just kind of like, we're here for it. If that's ever what you have to give, we're here for it. And so now we get to be lovey with each other, and it's really extra precious. And I was like, what if I turn that towards myself when I have this artificial timeline in my head about something? So anyway, that's what I've been tripping out on all day long. So
I love that you're tripping out on it. Well, honestly, that is pretty in sync with what I've been going through, because I came home from this big festival that I went to, a festival that completely kicked my ass, and I got super sick. I was sick. It was my body, to its credit, held off. To the moment I literally walked in my door, and then all of a sudden a fever overtook me, and I was just sick as a dog. The acceleration between feeling kind of tired and deathly ill was so fast. But I recognized that my body had done that for me. It was hold on, hold on, hold on. Okay, she's home. She can, we can be sick now and she can collapse. And it was, so instead of being mad at my body, I was actually really proud of my body. Number one, that it survived this festival. And number two, that it waited until I got to my own bed. And the sense I'll talk a little bit about the festival, but having gone through what I went through, being sick in my own bed was the biggest gift. It felt like I had so much gratitude that I was home and could turn on my hot water, heater, and I just had my blankets and quiet, and it was so grateful to be sick at home.
Yes,
And not in a
yes.
tent in the middle of Texas. So
Yes.
it's interesting. It's all about perspective, and then coming from a place of thank you, body, for holding out. Thank you, home, for being here so I could be sick with all my comforts that I need. It was there was no judgment about it. And I just let myself be sick. And it was actually really, I'm not gonna say enjoyable, because I was coughing and wheezing and everything, but there was this whole embedded gratitude that I could just have the space that I have to take care of myself in this really luxurious way. Because when luxurious surroundings are taken from you, and you're all of a sudden find yourself at a situation where you don't have any control over your water supply, your bathrooms, or that, man, those things are really precious again. Like when you get back to like, oh, I have all this, you know, yeah, what you totally take for granted. And like in a normal run of my life, getting that sick, I would be pissed. Like I was losing time.
Yes,
Like,
that's what
oh, thanks a
as
lot, body, for taking me out for, I mean, it took me out for like a full week of recovery. And instead, my attitude was like, yeah, take all the time you want. Like I pushed you so I did it. I mean, I know what I did. And so it also kind of ties in with his idea that I don't love the term self-sabotage, right?
right.
It's thrown around like, oh, you self-sabotage. No, like I really don't think that term is accurate because what it does, it's like you're denying the reality of having a human body. Like if your body doesn't have the capacity for what you just tried to do, it's just putting you in check. It's like a normal and healthy balance to what the brain thought was going on, you know? That's not self-sabotage. That's actually like a loving rebalancing of, you know, where you in your head like went off the rails a little bit, like or made a choice, like I'm gonna go off the rails. And the body's like, okay, and this is the price you pay. And
I
you
used to
know,
refer to my body as a loan shark. And I'm like, you know what? That's actually, it's not actually a loan shark. It's
no.
actually like really, really trying to look out for me. But I
Yeah,
was
it's
always,
always on your side. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, you know, waiting till I got home was such a benevolent sign from the body. Like it really was trying to be like, okay, hold off because, you know, we don't want her to get super sick in the car. We don't want to get super sick on the plane. We don't want to, you know, it's just it was the intelligence of that was I thought very powerful. And then yeah, I was just like, and being in gratitude for it was everything because then I was in no resistance to being sick. I actually kind of was just like, I'm just gonna enjoy having this wonderful excuse to not, well, I couldn't, I was so low energy, but like I can't do anything. I'm just gonna take like a full week to recover from the week I just took off to go do this wild thing. So
and that
yes.
I feel like that is a really key thing that I've been thinking about a ton, which is the ways in which we permission ourselves,
Mm,
and specifically the ways in which I permission myself about everything. And like a recurring thing that I have trouble permissioning myself for instance, is really silly, but it's like doing my studio dishes.
mm,
I always feel like if I'm still awake and I'm able to be in the studio, I should be working. And
mm.
somehow cleaning and making it really a nice space to work in, that's like self-indulgent in some way. Like I don't understand. I'm trying to figure it out. And like, but I realized recently before I went to teach, I was gone for the same week you were gone. Or I think that is the overlap, or maybe right after you were gone. So anyway, since we saw each other last, I was gone for a week also. And I usually don't get my dishes done before I go away to teach. And then I come back and it's like, oh God. But like, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do them. And I did them before I left. I know this sounds like totally ridiculous, but it's like, I realize it's like, why, when I was a baker, getting the bench cleaned off at the end of the shift was one of my favorite moments. It's not resistance to cleaning.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that at all. It's somehow resistance to taking care of myself, and by extension, taking care of my workspace,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't share it with anybody else. And so
Mm-hmm.
like, so anyway, that I feel like you had permission to just be human and to
Mm-hmm.
just let your body heal.
Mm-hmm.
And I am positive that you have had weeks where you have been probably potentially even sicker, where you were like trying to like drag yourself up to go water or whatever had to
Oh yeah.
happen. You know, like
Yeah.
how many times, many
Yeah.
times, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, even if I wasn't doing that, it's always about what's going on in your head. You know, it's the internal monologue of, oh, I can't believe this is taking this long, or like, oh, I can't believe this is, you know, judgment about maybe something I did or got in the situation, or like, you know, how far back I'm being, or like what I could be doing, even though I'm sick, blah, blah. You know, it's just all this mental clutter. And I'm telling you, since the eclipse, I have just been clear in my brain. I don't know. It was like a dynamic of being under that eclipse, but I've just been okay with it. Like, I'm just like, it's just what's happening. And a lot of that mental stirring of the pot that I perpetually do is absent. It's very interesting. And I was just like sick. I was just sick. I was kind of, it was like I said, I can't enjoy being sick, but I was with it. You know, I'm like,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
fully
yeah.
accepting it.
Yes.
And and then also, yeah, that layer of gratitude of like, well, if I'm sick, wow, I'm so sick that I have I'm so sick with my little hot tea maker thing that I have. And just all of the incredible abundance that we just take for granted all the time. And then when you're not sick, you get this other double check of like the incredible abundance of being able to sleep without coughing, and like the incredible abundance of being able to breathe through your nose, and the incredible abundance of being able to walk your dog without feeling exhausted after, like a half mile, and just like it's just like this whole other awakening that you just take so much stuff for granted, and then your body crashes and you have to rebuild from the ground up, and it's like, oh yes, I can do this again, and yes, this feels normal again, and my ears are still not quite completely open, but I can hear better. And I don't know, it's just really simple health things. And I think this whole lesson was about, yeah, just really appreciate your body and what it's doing for you. Like,
Mm,
and so
yes.
often our thoughts about our bodies are, it should be better, it should be working harder, or have more stamina, or look better, or what, we have so many judgments about the body, but like when it really comes down to seeing it as I don't know,
Amazing.
well, it's a miracle one, but also as its own thing. Like, I'm kind of getting into this animism idea of the body as an animal
Mm,
that our souls or our spirits inhabit, and it's a part of us, of course, but it's also kind of got its own intelligence, right? I mean, it can kill a virus. I have no idea how it's doing that. I'm just coughing up globs of goo, right? But it knows how to, in my lungs, surround the virus with these gobs of glue, and then like trigger me to cough it up. I mean, it has this deep, wise intelligence of how to heal
mm,
myself.
yes.
And to any extent that it cooperates with my brain at all, like, oh, I'm on a time schedule, I'm on a flight, like, don't get sick now. Like, that's even more interesting to me, because we can it
Yes.
can be like communicated with. It's not completely autonomous either. It's not just going to be like, yes, sometimes it'll get sick, but I think we take for granted that because we're always pushing on it and judging it and like making it wrong or making it needs to be doing something else, that when we are just in deep cooperation and gratitude with it, it's yeah, it's gonna have a period, like when it has a like
Yeah,
I couldn't
yeah.
hold that off. I did have a period on this camping trip and I wasn't happy about it. But, like, I also realized I signed up to go to a festival on a new moon and a big solar eclipse. So like, what did I expect exactly? My body would love to. Of course, it's gonna sign up for a
Oh,
period. And
yeah.
like half the women I ran into at the festival were like, "Oh, me too." I was like, "There it is."
And I'm totally in the phase of perimenopause that my periods are super
Yeah,
irrational. They're very erratic, and
they're
I told
irrational. They are. They're
they're
irrational.
I'm like, they're not periodic.
Right.
They're erratic.
Yeah, they're erratic.
But I totally was spotting, and I was like, well, of course it's the eclipse. Like even
Yeah.
here in Oregon, I totally want to hear about your eclipse thing. I and
Oh,
and like it was
I
interesting
will
because
tell you.
I feel like even though it was cloud cover here and it's only 25%, I was like, somebody was like, well, you should meditate during the eclipse because there's going to be people all over the world doing that. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to do that. And I had the windows open, and like I live in the woods. So like there's a lot of interface with birds and squirrels and chipmunks and stuff. And like the the little Douglas squirrel totally started the like freak out, freak out, freak out, freak out, freak out. And the birds all got really quiet. And then like they were totally reacting. I'm like, this is not about discernible difference in light because we had heavy cloud cover.
Mhm.
This is energetic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and yeah. And I'm like, so, and I was like kind of feeling like I was having some spooky feelings. And I was like, you know what? I have permission to have spooky I'm feeling it. Like
Yeah,
they're feeling it. That's happening.
totally. Yeah, we just don't have the little squirrel call,
Yeah.
but like our bodies are making that little like acknowledgement of like, yeah, the sun is being like there's a huge alignment with the planetary bodies of gravity, and we're responding to that. when I was in Texas, I mean, I flew to Texas for that moment. Like I really wanted to be under, now thinking back, I'm like, why did I ask for that? But I did. I really, I don't know, just had this like feeling that I should be there. And the whole festival was a wild ride. I mean, it was a crazy one-off festival in the Texas Hill Country outside of Austin. It was called the Texas Eclipse Festival. And it was 40,000 people, which is so many
Wow.
people. Like I don't think my brain even comprehended like what that would look like on a ranch in Texas. I mean, it looked like a city. There was
That's more
nothing
than
out.
that's
Yeah,
more than lives in Clatsop County.
I know. Exactly. Thank you for saying that. It was more than in my entire county that I live in. So, yeah, it was mind-boggling that they could fit that many people. But then you could climb up on these ridges and look down, and I mean, it looked like Las Vegas or so. I was like, what is going on?
Oh,
This looks like a full city. That's how much lights and stages and installations they had done. I mean, it was just massive. But because it was so massive, we camped like 2 miles from where the festival was, and we had to walk in, which, okay, like, not that big of a deal, but it's like a 45-minute walk or so,
yeah.
and it's Texas, so it's hot and, like, dry, and dust is blowing in your face, and then the campgrounds are covered with beautiful wildflowers. It was actually quite beautiful on this ranch, but they also right next to these beautiful wildflowers were cactuses and all kinds of spiky little deserty plants that had like, so our air mattresses popped immediately.
Oh,
You know what I mean? Because
oh
like we
yeah.
we made camp and it was like, shoo, like no, your mattresses are gonna
Oh,
survive the weird little spiky seed pods that were blowing everywhere on this huge ranch. And so it was just like we were so unprepared as Oregonian coasties to be like, what what we signed up for. I've never even been to Texas. Or maybe I've driven through it, but I've never like spent any time there. So I was just like, what? And then of course, I think this festival was very focused on music and technology, which is cool, right? It's
Oh,
like, um, I mean, that part of it was really interesting because I had not been to something that big in a long time. And like, but the part they kind of overlooked was like the human aspect of making people walk 2 miles just to get in. And like the bathrooms were just like they didn't have the bathrooms being clean. They ran out of water. It was just like, like all the human, like the nurture was not there. There was no nurture. It was very much like the mental, like this is going to be so cool. It's going to sound so cool. And it did. But man, the humanness of it was rough. Like just the physical experience of it was very Aries. I was like, this is the most Aries like moment because it was Aries eclipse, and I'm like, it's all just like intense and hot and like stressful on the body, but it's also super innovative and cool. And like I was exposed to all kinds of new art, especially lasers. We had a drone show, which
wow.
for those of you who haven't seen these big drone shows that they're doing now, this is going to be the future. There will be no more fireworks. This is my prediction. They were all going to be drone shows. And actually I think it's really cool because the drone shows are way more interesting than fireworks because they can tell a whole story I mean,
Oh,
they put like maybe, I don't know, 3,000 drones in the sky, each with a little light on it. And then they created the entire solar system in the sky. And these are big too, like think big firework, kind of displays above these stages. And you could see the whole solar system being shown to you with like moving like it. And then it like zeroed in on what was happening with the eclipse. So they showed you like with
oh
this
my God.
projection, like a 3D kind of looking projection of like the planets, the moon and the sun and the earth lining up. And then they showed an actual eclipse happening and the ring of fire, and then the ring of fire dissipated and it became like a UFO. And then there was alien. It was just like this whole story about
Whoa.
space and our connection to space. And I mean, that blew my mind. I was just like, that alone, that's the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. And that was just a bonus. Like they just they just did that. I didn't even know it was going to happen. I was just like walking around at night being like, what the hell is that? It's amazing. And the other thing that was really interesting and I thought appropriate for Aries and like, I don't know, because it's like the youthful sign is a Gen Z. I was the first time I really hung out. And I think Tully's kind of he's Gen
Yeah.
Z. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
you have a Gen Z son, so maybe you have more intel with that crew as they hang out around you guys. But like have always intuitively liked Gen Z as like what they're about, and even their lingo, I just like it. But like being in crowds of them and then walking 2 miles back and forth to camp and talking to a lot of just like, you just start talking to people you're walking with. And often it was like, a 17-year-old boy or like, or maybe like a 22-year-old girl, and just having these chats. And it was just super fascinating to hear, I don't know, just like to tune in with them and how really honest and vulnerable they were all talking about like,
Mhm.
oh, I got into this because I used to drink it or, like a lot. And then I got into music, and like just really vulnerable. I don't even know you. And then it always ended with us like trading something, because they have this kind of cool like barter thing in these festival and like the EDM, the electronic music scene. It's like I brought these little light up rings. And so I'd be
Oh,
like, oh, it's nice talking to you. Here's a ring. And then they'd be like, they dig in their backpacks and they'd find like these little stickers they made, or these little
oh,
bracelets that
that's
they
totally.
made. And it was just like universally everybody had a trade. Like if you gave them something, they gave you something back. Or if you were dancing and they liked the way you were dancing, someone would come up and give you like this really special, like little box that they had, like this whole little present for you, like a dance award. Like, we think your dancing's cool. Like, here's this. And I was just really charmed by it. I was like, this is really cute.
Oh,
Like,
that's so wonderful,
it
actually.
was really wonderful. And, part of me, as I was experiencing, of course, what I learned about my body and also about the festival is that when the sun was up, like there was none of this. I wasn't doing much of any dancing or activity because it was too hot.
Yeah.
So it was a nighttime thing. So you rested during the day and then you go and do the festival like all night long. So we were staying up all night long to like 5:30 in the morning, or 4:30 in
Wow.
the
Oh
morning.
my gosh. I'm so glad I did not go with you. I would
Right,
have been
right,
useless.
yeah, and that's not something I do at home. I usually go to bed at, like, 10. So, it was very interesting to be it, but it's like, it totally changes your reality too, like, so you're in this, like, alternate kind of world where you're in this, you kind of awaken at your vibration rises at, like, sunset, and you go to these big, crazy stages where they're shooting off flames and, I mean, lasers, and, I mean, the art behind these DJs, the projections of art that they can do visually right now on these stages was well beyond anything I've ever seen. How cool it was. I could just stand there and watch the art that they were
Regardless
projecting.
of the music. It's
Yeah,
like
I mean
watching a
the music was really really good because the sound. I mean, they put so much money into the sound systems, but
also it's by Austin, which is a huge music center, like the
yeah,
whole
yeah.
world. So
And there was like 7 stages going nonstop. It was just like there was so much choice of music that you wanted to see, but I just it kind of brought me to this place of like, this is so interesting that this generation is being drawn to these, like the whole festival culture, right, is super fascinating because I think this is me being like my little sociologist or whatever, but I think it really goes back to like that primary satisfaction of tribal, like
Mhm.
what are we doing if not standing like the energetics of this big bass music, which is drums, this
Yes.
big lit up fiery stage, which is big bonfire, and all these people gathering from all these different places and partying together, a lot of hallucinogenic substances going around. This is like ancient. This is how we've
Yes.
done this. Humans are very
Yes.
familiar in some core part of us, but this
Yes.
nurtures us in some way. I mean, this touches our soul. Like this feels right, even though it's being done in this incredible like next level technology, right? Like we were in these spheres that they had built where and I was a big one in Las Vegas. These were like the mini versions, but you could just there's like one DJ, but it was like the whole thing was surround with lights and music
Wow.
and a show. And so you're just in this bubble of like,
Wow.
animation and lasers. And it's just like, oh my God. It was a you didn't even have to be on drugs. It was a psychedelic experience just to experience the amount of like, you know, that amount of art and music coming at you at once.
But also it's not just like the like the music was being played by people
Yep.
and it was being amplified. So there's like this technology, but there's also the literally exchanging electrons with the humans that you're running up against.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, like and then there's like all of the like energetics of, was it you was telling me about the thing with when you watch a screen, one part of your brain is like, so if you watch music on a screen, it's activating a certain part of your brain. If you're watching music in the same room, totally different part of your brain is engaged.
Interesting.
So like I think we are so hardwired to be together and to be dancing together and to like
Yeah.
it's so yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
It's
it's palpable. Like when a group of when a DJ is I mean, I see them as kind of shamanic. I mean, they're up
yes,
there and
yes.
they're watching this huge, and we're talking crowds of, I mean, 10,000 people in a crowd. I mean, massive, right? So lots of people. And they get a beat going and everybody starts to like you could feel the 10,000 bodies like
Wow.
jumping or move. And I mean, yeah, how can you not feel like you're in
Uh,
almost like a part of an organism that's just like, pulsating, moving, and it's so powerful. It's so cool. I mean, I get it. I get why these kids are going to these festivals. It was because I was being ignited in all these interesting. I mean, I was up all night effortlessly because it was exciting. Like you can't like the energetic coming off of that was so fun.
uh,
It wasn't, I mean, you couldn't be bored. You couldn't be tired. I was like, what's next? That would,
uh,
and then it was the fun part was you could just kind of wander forever. I mean, the festival's miles long. I didn't even see a part of it. I mean, I'm sure I only saw a little part of it, even though I was there for like 5 nights, just, you
wow.
know, just trying to take it all in. And another cool thing I noticed about that generation is like, super non-judgmental. Like everybody was just wearing what they were wearing. Like I don't know, it was like bigger girls and like very skimpy outfits. And like but in a way that was just like, yeah, no big deal. Like no, but no one batted an eye. No one was like, oh, look at that. It was so different than when I came up in a certain scenes, where I was just like,
Yeah.
you just couldn't get away with that, or you had to look a certain, I mean, there was definitely just a little more like awareness of, I don't know, like yeah, how you could represent yourself.
Well, think about it. Like, when we were kids, there were, I mean, at least where I lived, there were three television stations, the three, like, and so like everyone was being beaming the same ideas were being beamed at the entire country.
Mm,
So it's like the sample space of what it looks like to be okay
right.
was really small. And like for this generation, they've had access to the internet. You can travel down rabbit holes into infinite worlds.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like they're going to school and they didn't all watch whatever Welcome Back Harder or whatever.
Oh my God. I
Like
haven't thought of that show in a long time. Yes.
right?
Wow.
Like they're not coming back to school having watched whatever.
Yeah. It's true.
Everyone's got, yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's
I mean, they could be
what it
watching kids in East Berlin and I mean, they're adapting like their styles and, stuff from like all over the world. I mean,
right.
this electronic music scene is really global and I don't know, and then also just like the gender bending queer, ness of the whole thing was really interesting and cool. And there was just like everybody was just dressed the way they wanted to, male, female, what I mean? It really didn't matter. Nobody cared. It didn't really care how old you were. I mean, it was just like you could strike up a conversation with anyone and nobody was like, oh, aren't you kind of old to be like, it was just like totally fine.
So do you think that part of back to permissions, when
Mm,
you are in that, they are holding this special space, that is the festival, is really, that is magic, right? That's total shamanism. It's creating this time out of time,
yeah.
and it's time out of time. And
Right.
so the social rules, like if you were to walk down, you know, the street in Portland and interact with some of the same kids potentially, they're adults. I mean, many of them are adults, some
Right.
of them are
Right.
still but like you wouldn't necessarily be able to have access to that kind of interconnection. Like that holding that space allows people to have person to person community interactions.
It's true. And I think that's a good point. And I also think that might be why in human history we've done these things as festivals. Do you know what I mean? Like Beltane's coming up, and I was thinking about that. It was very Beltane energy, you know, around this festival, like very big fiery, you know, very sensual, like, you know, the outfits were very sexual, but like it didn't feel commercialized sexually. It just felt like people expressing their bodies in any way they wanted to. And nobody was really, you know, it wasn't like people were objectifying them or ooh or ah. It was just like, okay. And I really love that. It was like, that's great. And you're right that, I mean, I think historically people did it, they gathered as tribes to celebrate these big festivals like Beltane or something to mix DNA, right? So we were so
Yes, yes,
inbred,
yes, yes.
especially like in the Celtic Isles or whatever. I mean, tribes had to
Right,
gather, right? To like have different mating going on so
right.
we cannot be all having
Two
like, I don't know,
heads.
yeah, genetic diseases and stuff like that. So there was a practical reason for it. But I do also think this permission, because
Mhm.
yes, individual tribes and villages would have rules, and they were generally suspended at these
Yes,
times of the year
yes,
when these events would happen. Like you could have sex with pretty much whoever you wanted to. Like Beltane marriages were kind of a thing. Like you could just get married for the festival and go for it, you know, and then they could be suspended afterwards. And there was this like permission. And I think we need that as
yes,
humans.
yes,
It's almost like, and then when you come out of that, you come back into the culture of permission or whatever, and you have a different it's healthy. It's like you take your time out to like feel yourself without that, and then maybe when the people go back home, they're like, okay, yeah, does this, you know, like questioning, challenging, or growing, or maybe that, I mean, just keeps cultures healthy to step outside of them into these magical spaces and come back out. I don't know. What do you think about that? Is that
I think two things immediately come to my mind.
Mhm.
One is like this idea of mundane space versus sacred space, and in that, you know, it's kind of like this like what is that, like the infinity symbol, right? It's
Mhm.
like you spending time, and certain people maybe just never go to the other side of it, like maybe they, you know, certain people spend their whole life just being like, ah, there's no, that's real, I'm just going to stick with this mundane world. And then there are people that are like never interfacing in the world in a real way, they're like kind of out there. But
Mhm.
like I think in a balanced life we're spending time in both those spaces, so I love that idea that it recharges us, and it's kind of gives
Mhm.
us that momentum,
It's
like
like that recovery we just talked about. This is
yeah,
like cultural recovery. Like you have to go
yes,
outside and experience something else, and then you come back in, and then you need these spaces, I think, to yeah, to kind of heal and recover from the time in the
well,
dominant culture.
and like travel too, travel just
Yeah.
generally does that
Yep.
for you. But
Mm.
and then the other thing that keeps coming up in my head during this whole time you've been talking um is I think we talked about this last time, like that human development are you know, like we think of like child development, and then suddenly when you're an adult you like stop developing, which I don't think that I think that idea is old idea, right? But I
Mhm.
think culturally that's kind of like the norm, like now I'm an adult, I'm stagnant,
Right.
yay.
Right.
But I think that we just continue to go through phases, we just don't haven't studied it as much, and everybody's at such a wildly different, you know, without the physical push of our bodies, it's less obvious. It's harder to tell. It's easy to tell
Yeah.
when somebody's going through puberty. It's harder to tell that you're going through your 50s.
Right.
But well, the thing I noticed when my children were developing is that invariably, when they were getting ready to do a big change, a big shift developmentally, two things would happen. One, they would start to gain weight a little bit,
Mm.
and their faces would get fuller before, you know, like, and it wasn't just like, and then they would kind of like, even if they weren't going to grow taller, they would kind of do that, and then they would like either grow taller or have like some sort of skill shift. But the other thing that would happen is then they would get sick.
Mm.
They would get sick, and then on the other side of that, they would be noticeably have gained a new skill, gotten
Mm.
taller, learn
Oh, this
like
is good. This is good because I've gained weight and I've gotten sick. So now I just have to wait. So I'm due for like a massive like skill set. to be imbued. No, I'm just kidding.
No, but it's true. Like, it's totally true. And like, I'm like, I do think about that. It's like, because it was like, wow, look at that. Like, you could see it. They're like, as they went up. And it's like, I think like, what is it that has us hold on to weight or not hold on to weight? Like, that's the body has a wisdom,
Yeah.
like the body has like a like really good reason for that. And so, because it doesn't, I don't think it's not 100% the calorie game, and it's not 100% the exercise game. It's way more complicated than that.
It
And I
is.
think part of it is this, like, how we are shifting in our minds or our spirits or our, like, that is hugely part of it too. And we're so
agree.
far from understanding that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think for me, I can speak for my personal weight gain, is it's about protection, like in safety. So if there does feel like there's a lots of change in the environment, it's almost like you're holding this safe energetic space or like layers of protection to like buffer you a little bit
Yes.
until you're ready to be like, okay, it's safe enough for me to, like, I don't know, shift, move, like do the new thing. But I definitely know that, like COVID, I mean, so many people put on
Yes.
so much weight, not just because they were quarantined, but because the uncertainty level
Yes.
around everything was sky
Yes.
high. Now, some people just genetically don't do that. Like they do other things, like they drink or whatever. But a
Right.
lot of people for safety, I mean, it's the most like direct correlation to safety the body has is to imbue more calories or hold on to calories. Therefore, we know you're not gonna starve, right? Like that's
Right.
so it feels safer to have weight on. Also, I think it's very protective. It's just like a shielding for, the body to put on weight. And yeah, it's super interesting. I think, well, I want to talk a little bit more about the eclipse itself because it
Oh,
was
yes, please, please.
before you get me too down that path, because I can have a whole podcast on talking about that. Um, I want to stay with the festival just till I have this. So wild. The day of the eclipse was Monday. It was supposed to be the last day of the festival, full day. And there was of course, a huge storm predicted, like tornado warnings and like massive hail. And I guess Texas does get these like crazy
Crazy.
beat down storms that, to our minds, again, don't really, we're like, oh, whatever, a storm. Like, they're like, no, like you need to, like, basically there was a text that went out to 40,000 people who were camping, a text on your phone being like, pack up and get out, a storm's coming, like, and we don't want to be responsible for all of you being stuck here while you're getting a tornado, in your tent. Like, and I was like, oh my God. So as this was going down, the eclipse was supposed to happen that morning, and they were going to have this big ritual and everything. And I was like, okay, we'll pack up camp and put it in the rental car, but I'm going to walk in. I'm going to do the 2-mile hike into this festival one last time to see if I can find a ritual going, because there must be something. I mean, they had this huge thing planned. I know. And as we walked towards the festival, I mean, it was wild. They had like Texas ranchers on horses being like, everybody out, like get out. Like it went from like, yay, festival to like the clearing the land like so dramatically. And of course, I mean, there was a moment where saw like, these people are still partying from the night before. Like this was like a around the clock party for some of these. And there was like very conservative looking like Texas ranchers on horses yelling at these kids who were like dancing on this like cool structure some, artists had built, and all these platforms on it. And one of the girls was topless, and they were just like, a DJ was playing, and you had like 5 very grumpy looking people on horses being like, turn that off, you go. And they're all just like, and I'm like, oh, this is such a, I don't know, but this is like the perfect moment of culture clash I'm
Yes.
looking at right here. This is the perfect example. So we walked past that because I'm like, we're just gonna keep going, we're gonna find the eclipse. And what was supposed to be this big ritual turned out to be like a ritual of 150 people who had the same idea I had. Like, we're just gonna find something. And it was cool. There was like it was on a very high point, but the clouds were there, and so I was doing my little self-talk of like, it's okay if I don't see it, even if it's cloudy, it'll still get dark, it'll be cool. So it was like partially cloudy. I mean, there was this chance of like, okay, we might be able to see it if that cloud stays over there, that whole thing.
Yeah.
And then as the eclipse started to happen, Oh, interesting side note. Andrew Weil, who's like a really famous author speaker, hung out with Timothy Leary, like, one of the OGs of the psychedelic movement out of Harvard in the 60s. He was there and he spoke the day before. So was Paul Stamets. There's a lot of really amazing speakers at this festival. He said, which I'd never heard before, he's like, you don't need eclipse glasses to look at an eclipse. He's like, you could just look at them with the naked eye. It wasn't like until the 70s that they even started saying that. He's like, up until that point, everybody had just to watch the eclipse and no damage happened. And I was like, what? Talk about a cultural myth. And he was like, I swear to you, I'm standing up here telling you, just look at it. And so I did, and it was fine. Like I watched the eclipse with no glasses on, and it was totally fine. So I just want to that's my little weird PSA.
Whoa.
Like, so strange. But I was like, I mean, I don't think he was lying to a whole group of people, like, as this big speech he was giving. But yeah, it was totally not a problem. And I have no idea like why they he said it got to the point so bad. We're like, and I remember this as a kid where you had to make a little box with a pinhole. Do you
Yeah.
remember that?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like you would look at the like little round circle of light being eclipsed. Like you couldn't even like look at all at the eclipse. And he was like, that's just garbage. Like indigenous people have watched, I mean, it's been done for centuries. Like it doesn't damage your eyes. And it's true. I watched the whole thing and it was totally fine. So that's just for future reference for people, uh, which I think is a whole other interesting like little rabbit hole of why they started freaking out about that. But as the eclipse started to happen and I was watching it, the weather, so all these turkey vultures started to circle. Big ring of birds started to circle in front of the sun. And as they circled, I mean, I know it was an actual like phenomena of weather, but it looked so much like a portal opening because there were these clouds. And I think it was what was happening is the temperature was dropping, right? Because the sun was being covered.
Oh,
So like must have been like a temperature drop in the atmosphere, and the birds were sensing that, and they were catching some kind of like crazy wind up there. But they were circling, and then the clouds just parted, like the whole sky
wow.
opened. And this, I mean, to all of the edges of the sky, the clouds just backed off, and the eclipse was like full view. So it was such a magical moment in nature just to see that, and it felt so powerful. And I was in this group where people were talking, blah blah blah, having
Yeah.
conversations, and dead silence. Everyone like dead silence, even from these young kids. They're just like, whoa.
Whoa.
And then people started to cry as it, got fuller. And when it was fully eclipsed, it was so cool because you could see Venus and Mars just like as soon as it got completely eclipsed, there they were. They were close to the sun, but you couldn't see
Oh,
them. And there's these two planets, and it was just this ring of fire. And it was still, I was amazed how light it actually was. I mean, it was quite dark, but still, that amount of sunlight was still so powerful that it was
ah,
illuminating the Texas landscape. And as the eclipse became total, you could just hear everybody yelling throughout this entire, like we were on a point, but like the whole, everyone just had
everyone was just
stopped.
like
Yeah.
totally
Drums
spontaneous.
going off, people yelling, and then all around me, like these, again, Gen Z, it was just like they were chit-chatting, and also it was like dead silence, and then a lot of people started to cry. And I mean, I was laughing because I was so stoked, actually. I was like, it worked. And then after that wore off, I felt a ton of emotion come up in my body. Like I got really choked up. I didn't bawl, but I was just like very emotional. And I think it's just such a powerful reminder of where we are. We're on a ball floating
Yes.
in space. I mean,
Yeah.
you really get it. You're like, we are in outer space. Like this is crazy the life we're living. And I just, again, such gratitude. And then as the eclipse ended, and the crowd just like spontaneously started singing Bob Marley's One Love, which was so
Wow,
beautiful. Like
interesting.
yeah, everyone just started being like, One Love. It was so sweet. And
Wow.
so what was gonna be like this big sound healing on a stage and all these performers just turned into this very almost Oregon Coast vibe, 100 people banging on some drums and just being together. And like again, we're all hugging each other. It was just like a really emotional, beautiful moment. And then we're all like, oh, we better go because a tornado's coming. And so and then 40,000 people tried to leave a ranch at one time. It took a while to get out of there, but um, it was so cool. It was such a perfect finale to this whole crazy week I had, but glad I
Wow.
went.
And so did you
Yeah.
guys go to the airport like right from there? Or did
No,
you have another
because
day?
yeah, because the festival had been canceled the day early. I mean, I felt bad for people who had, somehow booked a shuttle to the airport the next. I mean, they really impacted a lot of people's travel plans. If you had a flight, now you're a day early. Like, what are you going to do? You don't have a place to stay. Of course, Austin completely sold out because you have this
Yeah,
huge festival emptying out and everyone's grabbing every hotel room and
anything.
Airbnb. We were going to stay in Houston. Um, so I just called the Airbnb there and I was like, can we just come a day early? And luckily she was like, yeah. So we drove all the way back to Houston that night.
Oh, because you guys flew in and out of Houston,
We
right?
did because it was so much cheaper. Um, and then I was smart enough because I am older now to book an Airbnb with a pool and a hot tub. So
Oh,
my
nice.
nurture for and I didn't think the camping
Ah,
was going to be that rough, but I can tell you, like when we got there, we were like, I'm going to take 10 showers and sit in the hot tub and drink drinks with ice in it, which I haven't had in a while, just like all the
yeah.
winter comforts. Yeah. So we just like collapsed and slept for 2 days and then flew home. It was
Oh,
great.
that's actually you needed that for that
We
was
did.
a nice segue.
Yeah, it was definitely needed.
Oh man, it's interesting. Like, I feel like this. So I've like other stories. Like Tully, actually, a group of friends drove up to Ohio from Kentucky, where he's in school, to go to see it, and they had a kind of like the clouds opening so that they could see it. And my friend in Toronto had the thing where the clouds opened so that they could see it. So it's like I think it's super interesting,
Yeah.
like how there was no there. I in the totality, you had all of these people that were there with the intention of communing with that experience,
Mm-hmm.
like and like I don't know, like how much can we how much does our collective energy interact with the physical world in that way? And if that possibility is a lot greater than we think, then how far can we push it?
Oh yeah. I think we are already pushing it, but maybe in the wrong direction.
In the wrong direction. Exactly. How much
Yeah,
can we pull
yeah.
it back to
Yeah.
like, you know?
But also I think for me, just as like more scientifically, like I think that coldness that comes is an
Yes.
atmospheric push away from like the moisture will move away, which is great for me. It's like a note for future eclipses. Like I'm like, don't panic if it's going to be cloudy because that will probably happen like as the eclipse starts. And the next one, we ran into all these people in Texas who are eclipse chasers. So this is what they
Oh,
do. And the next one apparently is Morocco. So they're
oh.
like, see you in Morocco. And I'm like, oh yeah, that would be a blast. I mean, it really would be fun just to chase eclipses because it's such a magical, like communal experience with people and to see different cultures. It would be fun. I could get into it as a travel itinerary.
I mean, definitely after the 2017 eclipse, I was like, I have to do this another time.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I just had it's such a profound experience that it's like how can you not how can I not how can yeah, but I think we're gonna have to go to another country
Yeah. It
because
won't
I don't think
be
we get another one here for
like 20 years. Yeah. We'll be in our
20 years.
70s. Mm-hmm.
Will we still be live? Wait,
Oh
what's
my,
that like?
we're
Will
not
I
only going to
still
be
be here?
alive. I'm going to still be going to rave concerts. Hello.
I always like, will I be here next week? All right.
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess that's a healthy attitude. Today's a good day to die. But, I fully intend to be in my 70s going to see
That's
some eclipse at a big
yeah.
festival somewhere.
I think I'm gonna I think I'm gonna live to be 84.
Interesting.
That's my age.
Oh man.
Maybe 87.
Okay. Well, don't put a
87.
number on. You don't need to put a number. Don't create your own tombstone for the Grim Reaper. Like, just leave it open.
It's okay. Or better.
Yeah, or better. Exactly. How can it get any better than that? All right.
Oh my
I
gosh.
think with that, and now
That's
that we're
perfect.
predicting our own deaths, we should probably sign off. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and if you saw the eclipse. I'm so interested in how it's unfolding for you and what happened for you. If you have a comment, please leave us one. That'd be really cool to hear your stories. And we will talk to you next time.
Thanks for your report out, Ginger. That was awesome.
Yeah.